Okay, another Kerbal story. This time sitting on a lava beach. And let me tell you, lava is extraordinarily dark. And you should kind of appreciate that the moon that we see in the sky is made of basically the same stuff. It looks black if you bring it out into a lab comparing it to other bright stuff. But when you're on the surface of the moon and everything else is the same color, it looks white and bright. And of course, when it's in the night sky, it looks bright against the black background of space. But the moon in Kerbal Space Program early on was a massive challenge, and I want to talk about how hard it was to land on the early moon. So it was introduced properly as a place you could land in Kerbal Space Program 0.12. And around the same time, they also added the ability for spacecraft to go on rails and have time acceleration. And that was important because traveling out to the moon would take a very long time. Prior to that, I did time acceleration using Cheat Engine, and of course you did that too fast and the physics would all fall apart because of the power of the Kraken. But when the moon was introduced as a place to land, they didn't really introduce any of the modern niceties to make it easy. First of all, there was no quick save and quick load. You couldn't F5 and F9 when things went wrong. Secondly, rocket engines were all booster engines still. They had way too much thrust, which meant being very, very careful when you were landing and inevitably going up and falling back down multiple times. SAS, well, that was a fairly heavy part you had to add if you wanted to perform SAS capabilities. And then it still didn't have the ability to track retrograde, so you had to it would hold attitude, but it wouldn't let you just point retrograde and cancel out your velocity. Other things that were difficult. Well, back then there was no altimeter that showed your altitude relative to the ground, so you were pretty much guessing where the ground was. There was no landing gear. Let me tell you, there was nothing with like high endurance or high resistance to damage when you hit the ground. So there was more than one case where I would land and break something. I think the very first time I landed on the moon, I just smashed it because I was going too fast and everything was really gentle. Yeah, going to the moon was a serious piece of work. So the first few times I got there, what would happen is I would get extremely stressed because you didn't have a save file. You would have to repeat the whole thing. You were committed. And I think my heart rate probably went up to, 130 or something just because of the extra stress this added. And Neil Armstrong, famously, when he was landing on the moon, also had an elevated heart rate of a similar amount. I don't think any game has ever done that to me, with perhaps the exception of EVE Online. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to land on the moon. You have the engines, you have the save file, you have the control systems. But back then, it was a rare achievement to land on the moon. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.